All right, hello and welcome to the very first episode of Big Red Says. My name is Big Red. I'm the host. This is the show where me and my friends, we say things into microphones and we talk to each other and we possibly yell and tell each other to fuck off. So with me is my good friends Matt Schofield and Bekah Fenn. So hi guys, how you doing? It's a lovely Sunday. We're recording this on January 17th in 2021, and the reason why I'm pointing it out is because Betty White turned 99 today, and we have 365 days to make sure that she stays safe. So we need to bubble wrap her and just keep her away from anybody else. I'm just saying. I want her to hit the triple digits. So today we're here to talk about horror movies, a subject that especially Schofield and I literally have yelled at each other in front of everybody else that we work with about this subject. So whether it be, I don't know, whatever you want to bring up, guys, is it's your time. So basically the structure of the show goes like this. Everybody's going to get 20 minutes and they're going to bring up a topic and we're going to discuss it. Pretty much it's kind of simple, I hope. But to get us started though, I have brought with me the official Big Red Says dial of doom to figure out who's going to go in what.
You said you had this whole big thing about the order and I thought it was going to be like really exciting and it's just a paper plate.
It's dumb as fuck. So
yeah, very indicative of the budget we have for this podcast.
Exactly, yeah. All right, so to get us started, we're gonna go. And the fucking thing fell off. The paper clip just fell off and went behind the desk. So
I think that means you go first, right?
I think it's
no. So I'm gonna use one of those hair clippy things my wife keeps around the house. So
fantastic.
All right, so it is Schofield. You're going to be going first. Sweet. So it's pretty much Schofield. What do you want us to discuss for the next 20 minutes?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think we can finally have the conversation that you have been dancing around forever, Jimmy.
I already know what this is then. Can I guess it?
You can. Go right ahead.
Torture porn and how much you hate it.
It's true. I do hate it. So, I'm not much of an aficionado on torture porn, mostly because I hate it. I've seen a few of the Saw films. I have seen some Eli Roth stuff as well. So I kind of got a taste for it. There's a couple other really bad ones. I can't remember the name. There's that one, the Lindsay Lohan one that's just terrible, which is awful.
Scary Movie 4?
No. It's one where she's like in a chair and they use ice syrup to flush off her hand and she's like a twin or something.
Is it the one where she's a stripper or something?
Yeah, that one. It's awful.
Yeah,
awful.
I know who killed me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So the issue I have with torture porn is, first of all, it's really a reinvention of a genre of film that's been around for a long time. It was actually really in the 70s, right? With those exploitative kind of splatter films in the 70s. And the Italians did it better than we ever did anyway.
Sure.
With stuff
like a lot of things.
Like a lot of things, sure. Right? Like Cannibal Holocaust or another movie that isn't really well known and I recommend nobody ever watch, Salo, which is 120 Days of Sodom. It's based on the work of the Marquis de Sade, of all people.
Yeah, no thanks.
It's basically these four people during World War II, Italy, basically go and kidnap about like 15 people, kids really, like teenagers, and just proceed to rape and kill them all over 120 days. And it's just this like very long, drawn out thing. But the fact of the matter is, that is something I'm more in support of than like Saw. And this is why. Saw, in those movies, right, we are supposed to, especially later in the film series, supposed to identify more with Jigsaw, right? And kind of use him as the protagonist of the film. So the torture itself is used to titillate us and is our enjoyment. And we are basically voyeurs during this entire thing, watching these people die rather needlessly, right? He has this whole philosophy we're supposed to better people, but that never really seems to be the case. There's always another test for these people, or his apprentices then just killing them and not actually following his philosophy anyway, which doesn't make a ton of sense. But Salo, right, as horrible and disturbing and disgusting as this film is, never gives us the impression that the torture going on is something we're supposed to be enjoying. That's not the point. The torture is there to disgust us. It is there to horrify us, really just to disturb us in very visceral ways. And it's not us basically laughing at people dying in these very elaborate, like Rube Goldberg, Tom and Jerry sort of things, right? Which is what Saw and all of these things are. Mm-hmm. I mean, even you could call like Last House on the Left in like 1975, 1972, whatever it was is also kind of torture porn, the whole beginning of that. But the same sort of thing. A lot of critics said like people would leave the theater. Critics wouldn't even watch the whole film because the whole beginning is just this glorification of the absolute horrific abuse perpetrated on these two women in the beginning of the film, and that's supposed to be very titillating, right? And then like there's no artistic value in that, and it becomes a revenge piece, obviously in the later portion of the film, right? And even to such degree that film operators were cutting the film without actually even asking the film producers if that's what they wanted them to do, because they refused to show certain scenes in that film. Kind of how disturbing it was. They just did not want to show it. They just did not understand why. There are actually audience members who would steal the film, the reels themselves after the film, and then burn them because they were so upset about it.
Oh my God.
It's just, it was a horrendous sort of thing. And even that I'm more in support of than Saw for the exact same reasons, because it's showing torture and rape and murder as not positive things, right? You're going to have horror films where that kind of stuff is funny, right? You have like, a Nightmare on Elm Street stuff, Friday the 13th, and that kind of stuff, because it does become slapstick, but it's not murder in a graphic or realistic way. It's obviously very over the top, right? We're watching a world that is not our own. It's very much not our own. It's very clearly not our world, right? So all of kind of our morality becomes subjective in watching these films. But Last House on the Left, right? Even Saw, to a degree, especially the earlier films, is very much rooted in something that could happen. Saw 1 is a very realistic film and what could happen. I mean, it's not well shot. I have problems with the filmmaking. But like, it's very realistic, right? These two people are in a room. They have to get out. There's a mystery going on. Like, what's going on? It's not this elaborate, like, collar with shotgun shells and craziness that happens later in the films. It's really just two guys chained to a bathtub with a hacksaw, right? And then it's just kind of like this human drama sort of thing. I like that. That's interesting. You have a lot of films like that that are very good. Cube is a great example of that.
That's a
I think there's a movie on Netflix called The Circle, which is basically people keep having to choose who dies like every 10 minutes, which is a great film, right? It's very torturous, but again, it's not this, like, it's never something that you're enjoying watching them die. You're enjoying watching them trying to struggle to figure out what the hell to do. It's a morality tale, right? Which I like a lot better. So I just don't feel that torture porn in and of itself, that actual thing, torture porn, not splatter films like Salo and Last House on the Left, even to some degree, but these torture porn films, which we are supposed to get some sort of, enjoyment or arousal, whatever you want to call it, out of the actual torture, have really any artistic merit. So that's my whole stance on that.
Yeah, because I mean, okay. So I love the Saw films. I
know you do.
I'm like, I'm chomping at the bit. So, all right. So, yes, I do understand what you're saying about the whole. So there's definitely two different points of view on this one when it comes to the Saw films. Yes, as you said, there's a lot of people out there that think that just, let's just do a Rube Goldberg and kill a bunch of people in really, fucked up ways. But at the same time, when you watch it and you really take in the story of Jigsaw and all of his apprentices and everything, there's one or two apprentices that do go off the rail and they go rogue. And Amanda, for instance, is not following the rules, as you find out in number 3, and she ends up getting killed over it. And then you got the detective who at first is following the rules, but then later ends up snapping and then going after people and doing it incorrectly, but still making it look like it's a Jigsaw thing. And then at the very end, you find out that the doctor, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but the doctor from the first film has actually been like the major apprentice who's been correctly following the rules throughout all the films. But at the same time, I watch it because I think that, and it's fucked up as this is going to sound, I think that like the way that they do this stuff is creative, like the way that they organize all like the maze systems and the different, using like a carousel and a shotgun system, in one system. Like, I don't know. I find them interesting, even though it sounds fucked up to say. And I think that it's creative the way that they come up with this stuff. Mm-hmm. At the same time, though, like for instance, like Hostel. The first Hostel is actually based off of true stuff that has happened. Eli Roth actually started as making a documentary and ended up being, he got blocked so much going overseas to try to film footage that he ended up just being like, okay, so I'm going to take what I've already heard about this stuff, and I'm going to go and I'm going to film a film about it. Which the first one I think does definitely, it's scary because it is realistic. It can happen. You've heard about stuff happening like this over the last 50, 60 years. But then I think the second and the third were just basically made because the first one made money. Sure. But the other thing is I am kind of glad that the torture porn subgenre died off after the Saw and the Hostel films were the successes that they were. I am looking forward to the next film though in the Saw series, Spiral, because that's going to be absolutely freaking amazing that Samuel Jackson and I almost said Kid Rock, Chris Rock are in a film together. I know Kid Rock just turned 50, by the way. I mean, he just turned 50. What the hell?
Why do you know everyone's birthdays, Jimmy?
Exactly.
Side note.
I'm one of those people that knows random birthdays from looking online and stuff. But the Betty White one, I found out somebody preemptively 3 days ago on one of the groups I'm on Facebook was like, "Happy birthday," and I'm like, no, then I checked and I'm like, oh no, this is a couple days off. So, but yeah, but yeah, like I said, I like the Saw films, but I see where you're coming from though. Last House on the Left, for instance, is a great example because of the fact that that rape scene at the beginning goes on, and this happens both in the original and the remake, where it just goes on forever, and it's just the most uncomfortable thing to sit during. It just that one really bugs me.
Yeah, I think that's the key part for me is how long it goes on and how many shots of it there are. At a certain point, it doesn't serve the story anymore. Sometimes it's having something really visceral does serve it. I trying to think of an example. It's not torture porn, but Midsummer is pretty sanitized for a good chunk of it, and then there's some really gory moments that are pretty quick. But having those moments completely shock you and take you out of this headspace that you were in before, and also serve to make the villainous people who you could start to feel kind of oh, those are the good guys. You're oh no, they're the bad guys. Okay, you've
I still have to see that one. I know I'm behind on my movies.
It's great. I love Midsummer, but that, I mean, I wouldn't call that torture porn, but that's kind of the line of where it sits with me, because at a certain point, I have ADHD. I don't want to sit through something that's not interesting to me. So if we're just going through a big drawn out torture scene that's not telling me anything or serving the plot, what's the point? I did enjoy the first Saw movie, but it was because there was that mystery. You didn't know the shtick yet, and then as it went on, the series was very much just all right, what's the new wacky contraption that we can make? And that's kind of its own thing.
Right. Yeah.
Versus you had these two guys trying to solve the mystery, and then when you do find oh, there was a key at the very beginning, and you're oh my god, it's such a twist. Yeah. But then it's it kept doing those twists. Yeah. And it also really required you, as the series went on, they still pinned it to that morality thing that this was a good thing that he was doing for people, or that he was somehow in an okay area. Maybe he wasn't the worst, but he was thinking he was doing good, and it really just doesn't. It's never been a solid argument. Maybe if what he was doing was torturous, but everybody always lived, or I don't know, what could his good intentions be of torturing someone to that level? And if you don't survive getting your jaw ripped open, then you don't deserve to live. You stole from a baby one time, and now you don't deserve to live. It's so flimsy if you think about it for any amount of time. So it really requires you to just shut off your brain, and then it's the entire point is just the spectacle. And if you're not into gory things, what is that? What are you getting out of it? Unless you're ooh, look at the way they constructed that machine that ripped her jaw off.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Which is what I'm into. Yeah.
Yeah,
the jaw's ripped off. I love it so much.
Yeah, I mean, to that point too, like Victor Crowley, right? The Hatchet films, right?
Yes.
I watched the first one. Jimmy let me borrow that one, which I thought was a fine film. It was well made. I didn't think it was a reinvention of the slasher genre or anything like that. I thought it was good, above average, but the kills were interesting, right? And from a technical standpoint, it's very interesting to watch the special effects of that. I remember. I do a lot where I will watch a lot of fight scenes in very slow motion and kind of watch what's going on. Because the funniest thing is if you ever see a bad fight scene, you'll ever see something in the background just doing nothing for a while, making it look like they're doing something, waiting for the actor to get in position because they're late. It's hilarious.
Yep.
If you want to see a really good one, even though I don't like the movie very much, the second Matrix film, the fight on the stairs.
Yep.
Right? watch it in slow motion, watch all of the stuntmen, watch Keanu Reeves. There is never a dull moment in that fight. Like, he knows exactly what he's doing. All the stuntmen know exactly what they're doing. It's a very technically well put together fight scene. Although the movie's not the best. We won't talk about that. That fight scene alone is great. So to me, the torture porn films like Saw and stuff eventually become kind of like the special effects laden films, like the summer blockbusters that you're watching for the effects,
right?
Not really for the story. So they're very much like popcorn movies. They don't really have anything to say. Like a lot of other horror movies that I really like Night of the Living Dead or Get Out, or I know Jimmy doesn't like the Babadook. We'll talk about that some other time. But I think movies that actually have a bit more to say on culture and humanity and whatnot. I always find it funny. Like, I remember watching, I forget what film it was. We were watching some movie with like a 10-minute fight scene in it. My wife was just like asleep. She liked the film, but that fight scene just went on forever for her. And she was like, I just don't care. But I remember we're watching the Sex and the City movie, her and I, and there's about an 8-minute montage of Sarah Jessica Parker like putting on different outfits, which I'm bored to tears, and she's super excited about. I'm like, oh, this is your fight scene. I get it. I get it, right? So I think the Saw films, to your point, Finn, are very similar. Where you're like, okay, this torture's still going on. God, I'm kind of grossed out by this, and this isn't doing anything for me. I'm not enjoying the technical aspect of it. It's not furthering the plot. Why are we still watching this?
Yeah,
it's kind of the point I have with those. If they're not doing anything for the story, then all it is just me watching these elaborate traps killing people, and that's it. And I just don't see any. I mean, I know you enjoy them, Jimmy. That's totally fine. I don't hate you for enjoying them. I just don't think they have anything to say, right? I hate you for other reasons. Yeah, we'll talk. We'll have a whole episode about why I hate you later.
Exactly.
But I just don't think there's really anything overly worthwhile about that subgenre in general.
Okay. Well, I did agree. Like, some of the other ones that came out, and I was trying to figure out what, like, before the episode, I was trying to think about, because I knew you were going to bring this up. I was trying to think of other ones that weren't Hostel or Saw, and honestly, like, the other ones that came out in that time frame between, like, what was it, like 2003 or 4 to like maybe 2011 or 12.
Well, Saw was what, 2004?
I think so, yeah. Because I think I graduated high school when it came out, I think. And so the other films that like are considered like the torture porn basically like fell off the face of the earth. Like, nobody really remembers any of those at that point. Other than those,
I have to say, I think the best films I've ever seen that are scary are ones that don't actually have to rely on that kind of stuff to scare the hell out of you.
Well, yeah, Jaws is a great example of that.
Jaws is a great example. The Orphanage by Del Toro is still one of my favorites because there's one scene that's very quick, that's kind of gory, and that's it. And the movie is freaking terrifying.
Right. I mean, The Sixth Sense is another great one. There's I think a vomit scene or something like that, and I think there's no other gore other than was it Donnie Wahlberg in his like messed out state, with the blood on him at the beginning and the end. Other than that, there's no gore in the thing, but it's suspenseful and scary as fuck. Like,
yeah, I mean, it gets very gory. Hereditary gets very gory.
Oh, yeah.
But there are points where there's not any gore, and it's just terrifying.
Oh yeah,
like, it's just this like sense of dread the entire film.
The threat of like the violence and like the spectacle is kind of
so much worse.
Yeah, and I think like in like current day with a little bit more lax like ratings and also just like much more advanced CG stuff, we lean on those a little bit more maybe than we would have in the past. Like, maybe those directors who did those other films would have done that more if they had it as an option, but because they didn't, they had to get a little bit more creative, and like I think it shows that works. So it's like more that it's like the seasoning, like the special sauce you put on top. Like, occasionally you get a movie where it's like there's a killer and like it's an artistry, like if that's the reason behind it, like they have a certain reason and you glean something from like the way that they kill, like that is a little bit more reasonable. With Saw, like they threw that out immediately. But like, have you ever seen I think it's like Collector or The Collection?
Yes.
That's like another one that kind of reminds me of that, where like it's the same sort of thing. He just like takes a house, he booby traps it. They're like way over the top kills. Like there's one where he goes into like a nightclub and like gets like a harvester combine and just like goes through a crowd of people. It's over the top, but like you do like they never make any like attempts to be like this is a morality kill. It's just like a guy who's weird and he has like a weird thing about like spiders and stuff, and some of the ways that he kills are like the same sort of way of like he's this weird predator and like trying to understand like an animal, like a spider, like a creature, as opposed to like I'm doing this because you cheated on your wife.
Right.
Like sometimes those are a little bit more interesting to me, like, and I could justify having more violence in those, but like otherwise just keep me on the edge of my seat for like the majority of it, and then occasionally surprise me with like some gore.
By the way, interesting fact about the first one is that the writers of the film actually pitched it to Lionsgate and were like, we think that this would be a great prequel to Saw, and they rejected it. But they were like, but we really love your script though. Just change a little bit. Don't make Jigsaw involved in it, and then we're going to turn it into this film. And then I agree. I love those two films. Again, just because they're just he's just fucked up. A minute and a half, by the way. But yeah, the guy's just fucked up, and so I think it's also great because you never, as far as I remember, you never find out who he is. So there's a complete mystery still at the end of the second film as to who this guy is.
But you do get to see like his base of operations, and that kind of like opened things up to like, oh no, you're a whole new level of weird. Like you're making experiments and stuff, and like that made it even further. Like if they had tried to connect that and like make him Jigsaw as a prequel, that would have completely ruined all the other Saw movies too. Because it's like, well, no, you're not like a morality person. Like, you're clearly just fucked up, and you're using this to justify it.
I think I'm going to use your tagline here, Fen, to finish this up. Saw, you stole from a baby one time.
And now you die.
And now your life is determined whether you can survive having your jaw ripped in half because of that baby.
Fair and balanced.
Whatever it was.
Oh my gosh.
That should be the tagline for Spiral. Spiral. One time you stole from a baby.
Maybe. You never know.
It depends. What did you steal from the baby, though?
It's life.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That one you could die for.
That's a little different. That's a little different.
Yeah, throw the person into the saw trap right then and there. If the person steals the baby's life, yeah. No. All right, 15 seconds left. Anything else anybody wants to say about this topic?
I said my piece. I think we're good.
Okay, cool. All right, so I guess we're gonna try. I'm gonna try spinning the thingamabob again, and hopefully not lose it. So here we go.
I even just flipped a coin. There's only two of you.
All right, so it's pointing towards Bekah. It's like right on the line. It's like, so we're gonna go Bekah.
Seems like a very scientific system.
Oh yeah, it's the most technology. I mean, I totally tested it right before we started the episode too. Oh yeah,
and it went off without a hitch.
Exactly. All right.
Okay, no pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, my topic. I mean, I was thinking about what I wanted to talk with you guys. Obviously, you guys talk way more. Like that being an ongoing a debate that you two had is interesting, and so I feel like I'm a little bit like slightly removed from your like generation of movies because I was a 90s kid. So like I've never really got into like slasher like serial ones. Freddy versus Jason, all that stuff like was never my jam. I'm very much more into like atmospheric and one-off stuff. So like I was like, what should I subject you guys to in my weird taste? Since I don't know, what haven't you guys talked about before?
Sure.
And so I have my two favorite sort of genres are atmospheric spooky stuff and then found footage. So I figured we could maybe like just talk about both. But found footage, I'll just like talk about quickly because I don't know if there'll be much debate here, but like it's my favorite because it's like the type of horror that is most genuine. Like I could stumble across it in real life, sort of a thing. Like it fully immerses me. Like some of the scariest real life stuff that I've seen has been stuff where I've just like been on the wrong part of the internet and I'm like, oh shit! Like you find a weird video. So like. That's the same sort of thing with found footage. Like you feel like you're stumbling across someone's like video diary. There are some like contrivances with found footage which don't bother me, but like sometimes talking to people, they find it a little bit cheesy. Like the fact that there always has to be a reason for someone videotaping can sometimes get a little silly. Like a lot of times it's like, oh, a documentary, or like, oh, we're going on spring break and one friend just videotapes everything. And there's certain points where you kind of like step back and you're like, why would they have a camera right now? Like I don't know if that's ever bugged you guys, but like sometimes also they'll do like the mock found footage where there'll be shaky cam but every single character on the cast is on screen, so it's like who is videotaping right now. That also doesn't bother me at all, but like I know it does for some people. I guess I'm curious for you guys, like are you into found footage, or is there anything like that where you're just like, it doesn't quite sell it for me?
I'm actually waiting for Schofield's answer on this one.
I have no problem with found footage stuff. I thought the best one, honestly, for me for found footage, because it had believability, at least in the first one, was the first Paranormal Activity.
Ooh.
Right? Because it just makes sense. Like they explain it very well in the film. Why are there cameras everywhere? And they explain it, and that's actually the whole point of the movie, as that there are cameras everywhere, which makes a lot of sense. I also don't mind kind of suspending my disbelief that everyone's just filming something all the goddamn time. All right. Because the thing is, any horror film nowadays, we have to have that obligatory scene where my cell phone doesn't work. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I call the police, but the response time is like 9 minutes or whatever, right?
Yeah.
There are certain contrivances you have to make in any film, right? Or what's it like 500 Days of Summer or whatever it was with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. They meet each other and they fall in love in 2 days. Just go with it, right? You just kind of have to like understand that this is kind of what the movie's trying to tell you.
Right.
That to enjoy the movie, you're going to have to swallow this little hook, right? This bait, and then kind of, okay, you've swallowed that. Now enjoy the rest of the film. So I don't have any real issue with that, with found footage stuff.
Mm-hmm.
My only issue is when they really lean on the found footage, like being the scare, right? It's kind of weird to me. I don't like as much. But I do think there's some really clever stuff you can do camera-wise. Like Blair Witch, I thought was great when I first saw it. A, because you kind of didn't know if it was real or not the first time you saw it because they did a good job of the marketing. But even beyond that, you are very limited in your scope of vision. Because you're watching this. There's no peripheral, right? You're very determined to see what the character is seeing, and that's it, which can be scary because something happens over here, and they choose to go this way and run away from the thing. You don't know what it was.
Yeah.
Right? When a horror film, you have this wide, like you're on like those like still like steady cams, you got the wide screen, you can see everything, right? So it's kind of then it's more of like a camera trick that the director has to make as opposed to like you just being invested in the character running away from what was scaring them. So I think there's some clever stuff you can do with found footage. Okay. Now, granted, I haven't seen a ton of found footage stuff, but the most of the stuff I've seen, I enjoy it. I think that they did a good job of it.
I think there's also like to the point of like you not seeing the scare because they choose to turn the camera. When it's like I'm believing some amateur is holding the camera, I'm like constantly scanning the frame because like realistically it could be someone here and they're just a dumbass and not like it's too shaky for it to really pick up. And like if I look hard enough, you like in a lot of these you can see like weird little stuff in the background. There's that contrivance though of like the first like 2/3 of most found footage movies, there's very little because like it's all just like bait and switch kind of like spooky ambiance they're really building up. But I sometimes that gets old. Like Paranormal Activity is like the first one was great because it was the first one, but after every single one when it does that same thing, you're like, Jesus Christ, I can just skip the first half of the movie.
There's very particular like camera tricks that people do that my wife's always like, how'd you know that was coming? I said, well, if I'm like this on camera,
yeah.
Why am I like this?
Exactly.
I'm supposed to be here, but I'm over here. That means the scare's coming from over here.
Sure.
Because why are we looking at this negative space, right? So there's like a lot of camera tricks people like. That's a really obvious one, but there's a lot of camera tricks that people do because it's a filmmaking thing. But when found footage, most of that, if the found footage is good, goes right out the window because it's supposed to look amateurish. So you're right. You scan it like where the hell's it coming from because there's no trick that I can kind of tell because I've seen 9,000 of these.
Yeah.
But, yeah. No, I think that's definitely a good medium.
So for me, I've seen a lot of found footage. I honestly, it's not a genre that I seek out, but if it looks like it's going to be really good, then I'll see it. I'd have to say definitely like the first 2 VHSs were really good, and I thought that they had a really good premise as to why they found the videos. Number 3 was a pile of shit, but I'm looking forward to number 4. Number 3, I don't know, it just kind of lost the magic that the first 2 had. And then for me, I'd have to definitely say I agree. The first Blair Witch, not any of the sequel or the 2016 one. I don't even want to see that one. But Blair Witch was a really good one. I'd have to say probably one of the best I saw was Above So Below. I don't know if either of you guys.
Oh yeah,
that's a good one. Yeah,
we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
So that one, my wife and I are in the theater watching it, and we ended up being late, and it was opening weekend, so it ended up being pretty packed. And so we ended up in the first row. And there's a scene in that one where the camera operator gets stuck, like literally, like they have to crawl through.
Oh yeah.
He gets stuck, and then one of the other people grabbed the camera and they're pulling at him, and it was the only time I've ever felt like things were going wrong for me. Like I actually was, it was drawn on to a point where I started to physically start to feel like, okay, I'm starting to get claustrophobic. Like I was probably within 10 seconds of looking at my wife and being like, I'll be right back. Like I need to leave the theater. And then the scene ended, but I still had that lingering like, oh my God. Like we're in a tight, like I've never felt really claustrophobic in real life. other than like a certain situation, like if I got a pig piled on or something like that. But like that was a strong fucking feeling that I've never felt in any other way. So that one is definitely one of my favorites. Another one is The Gallows. The Gallows 2 was a pile of shit. But the first one was really, I mean, it's got a really low rating on Rotten Tomatoes and people don't like it. I don't know why. I think it's fantastic. I actually went through a little list. Afflicted is a good one. Paranormal Activity is a great one. Quarantine, Troll Hunter. I have to advise you all, you have to watch this movie called Troll Hunter. It is part comedy.
Good,
part it's so good. So good. It should not make you, it should be considered a shitty film. At first, you're kind of going, I was looking at my friend and my wife when they were showing me this, and I literally was like, why am I watching this? This looks like a pile of shit. And then all of a sudden, like you saw the CGI of like a couple of things, and I'm like, that's really shitty. But for some reason, the thing sucked me in. It worked somehow, and I don't know why. Like, there should be no reason why this movie is so good, but it's fucking fantastic, and I love this movie. And then another one would be the Unfriended films. What we do in the
Unfriended was... Unfriended for me got old because it was literally this.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's one of the first
2
ones
hours,
that
and I'm
that.
like, there's no dynamic motion.
Mm-hmm.
There's no scene change. It's just me staring at a computer screen for 2 hours. I'm like, I do that every day at work.
Yeah.
Do this for a movie. I thought it was a cool idea, but I'm like, it would have been good for like a creep show episode for like 45 minutes, right?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. There was a movie that was made, I can't remember. It was over like the past year, so it was filmed entirely like quarantined.
Searching. Was Michael Cho?
No. That one was like a huge thing where they made their own proprietary like software to like film it, and it took years to actually edit. That one was like more artistic. This one was like entirely done like how we are right now, intentionally, because like none of the actors could get together. It's like a group that gets together for like a digital seance kind of like fun thing, like your work hires people to like entertain you sort of thing. So it's believable in that way because we're all doing that right now. Like if you want to have a party, you get like a magician that comes and does it over Zoom. But like it
did,
yeah. But I think it's like 55 minutes. It's a really short film, but like it works for this. I mean, it could have, I thought it was well executed and could have been longer, but like if that was kind of like what was holding you up, like kind of the visual stagnantness of having it be a screen, that one might be a good one to check out. I'll have to look up what the actual name is. I forget what it is.
Yeah, shoot me that one. Because that sounds like a good length to me.
Yeah. 10 minutes, by the way. We're halfway through.
Okay.
But really quickly, I gotta say, the last two I gotta point out is I don't know if you really consider this one found footage, but What We Do in the Shadows. I mean,
like a mockumentary. I like those too. Yeah.
Yeah, more of a mockumentary than a found footage, but yeah. And then I will say, So Above, So Below, and that got me claustrophobic as hell. I'm mildly claustrophobic anyway. So like I had a hard time getting through that one. I had really hard time getting through The Descent because of that too.
I was gonna bring that up. Yeah.
I forgot about that one. It's so good.
That triggered like a fear of caves in me.
I have a problem with claustrophobia. I have a problem with water too. So The Descent both. I'm just like,
oh my god, yeah, no, wow.
I had a hard time getting to that one. Yeah,
tried that one.
Yeah, but like going back to like me finding stuff on the internet, like creepypasta and things like that. There's an old one about a guy that went caving, and every time he'd come back, he would like share photos of him going caving. And I don't think it was real. It was creepypasta. But like, yeah, eventually he stops posting because he keeps going back to this one like creepy place, and you have to go through a really skinny like tube of a thing to go through, and just like. Yeah, just the idea of getting trapped there. It was like nothing but like little pictures of like dark caves and stuff. It shouldn't have made me scared, but like the fact that it felt like it could be real, like I was reading someone's online diary, like made it worse.
Which creepypastas do like that because that's kind of a found footage sort of genre as well, right?
Yeah. Right. It's like my friend is giving me this story as opposed to like me watching a perfectly filmed thing. I don't know.
That's true.
As Be Above, So Below, that one also has like a part where that same poor guy that got trapped, he falls down like a well, and I'm afraid of heights. That one also got me, but like his arc just in general really freaks me out.
Yeah, seriously.
He like keeps seeing a creepy woman too, like the creepiest woman, like because he's the cameraman, and that poor guy.
Oh, I know.
But it's a good movie. I'll come back to that one.
And the last one I want to bring up is the Visit, which was really, really good.
Is that the one with the grandparents?
Yeah.
Was that found footage?
Ding dong.
I think I'm thinking of a different one.
No, I think I'm thinking of the Shyamalan one, The Visit.
Yeah.
That's not really found footage though, is it?
Yeah, no, the brother is recording the whole thing on his camera.
I guess I didn't realize that. I'll vote that
It
one.
was so well filmed, I didn't even notice.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw it in the theaters once. It was kind of like, about it. I thought it was fine, but yeah, I'll watch it again. Yeah, the Shyamalan, right? Where the grandparents aren't the grandparents. They're
Spoiler alert! Damn.
That movie's been out.
I mean, that's
forever.
the conceit. Yeah, are they? Aren't they?
I'm not gonna lie. I didn't see that twist coming.
I mean, it was a little bit different than I expected, but like like it's got to be something with them.
It's
That's
Shyamalan.
the whole. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but with him, I thought it was gonna be like not. I was kind of while I was watching the first time, I was sitting there going, okay, so he's already done Aliens, he's already done People That Are Dead, he's already done a was it the Village thing where they're living in the alternate or they're living in this year, but they think they're living back in the past. So I was kind of racking my brain about like what could they possibly be. And honestly, the most simple thing was that this couple murdered their actual grandparents and then replaced them, and then they didn't know this. Like my mind was absolutely blown in that one.
Talking about swallowing a couple of hooks on that one too, to kind of the contrivance.
Yeah,
to just made you disbelief on that film. But I thought it was a fine film. I didn't think it was good. I thought it was all right. That one.
You are such a snob.
I'm always talking about two things, Jimmy: beer and movies. That's about it.
Oh, yeah, the two things we talk about all fucking day.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
There's one other found footage series that people always forget is found footage, but it's really good. Creep. Have you guys seen that?
I haven't seen that one. No.
Oh my god, you guys need to see it. Like that one is crazy.
Okay.
It's not my favorite, but not for any good reason beyond just like there's awkwardness to it, and I get secondhand embarrassment really bad, and I can't handle it. But like it's so perfectly executed. The conceit is that the guy who's filming was going on Craigslist, and the guy was like, "Hey, I've got cancer, and I want to make a video for my son, so when he grows up and I'm dead, he can watch this video and whatever." So like realistic in that way, and it gets creepier and creepier. And then there's also a sequel to it, and I won't say anything more of that, but they're like incredible films. Like it's scary in a different way than a lot of other found footage is. It doesn't do that sort of like, oh, when's the jump scare gonna happen? I'm in a dark room. It's like just entirely on the performance of this main actor that you're like following around. It's great.
Okay.
89% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
For a horror film, that's huge, especially found footage.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch that. Yeah, but it's a good transition to your next topic, Finn. It's very much a sustained spooky dread feeling.
Yes. I don't know if I want to like jump ship now, knowing that I have like a limited 4 minutes left.
4 minutes and 40 seconds.
I think we should just continue to milk this one because like I could talk for days about my next like other genre and have like a really deep.
Yeah.
Say what films have we seen that we don't consider good found footage? Because honestly, I gotta say, I don't like Cannibal Holocaust. There's multiple reasons why I don't like it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's a nice bridge of both our conversations. That's found footage and torture porn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think the biggest reason is because of the fact that like
they kill a turtle on screen.
First of all, they're killing real animals, and they really went out of their way to make sure that you thought that this was a real film. And I'm kind of like
they arrested the director.
Yeah, and they had to make sure that the woman that was on the spike, they actually had to find her and make her show up in court in a different country to make sure that like this person wasn't going to be found guilty.
Yeah. And the problem was this is a woman who flew to Italy to film this.
Yep.
She filmed it and then was like, all right, fine, and flew back to California and was just like no-name actress. So they had a really hard time tracking her down.
Yeah, because this is before
this went on.
Going to jail for that.
I think it was a couple of months. This guy was languishing in court cases, failing to produce the actress, and they literally thought you murdered this woman on screen.
Yeah, and then just buried someone.
Yep, it is a really weird movie. I do really want to watch. Joe Bob Briggs does the drive-ins on Shudder. Oh, I think it was right? He does one on Cannibal Holocaust, and he actually released one where it's just his commentary without actually watching the film.
Oh, okay.
Which I actually might watch because I've never seen Cannibal Holocaust. I probably will never watch Cannibal Holocaust. It's one of those films like Salo where like I get what they're trying to do and I appreciate what they're trying to do to some degree, but I'm like I don't think I'm ever going to really watch the full film because I don't think I'm going to be able to sit through it. But I think watching this commentary would be interesting on that one.
If there was a way to edit the film so that you take out the actual animal murder, then maybe you can watch it. I
don't know. For prolonged scenes of rape and then murdering a girl, I don't think I'm going to be able to sit
yeah, I forgot that happened too. Oh, so I saw it when I was like 2021. It was, I found it online and I watched it, not realizing that like the animals were really going to be killed and that this was really that fucked up. Like I was just, it was one of those like, oh, I heard about this movie because it's really fucked up. So I was like, oh, let's watch this. And now I'm like, no, never again. It's been 16 years and I'll never do it again. So yeah, no.
Speaking
Yeah,
of
I
that,
also haven't watched that.
have you guys ever seen Galaxy of Terror?
No.
No.
Yeah, well, you want to talk about a really disturbing scene, go watch Galaxy of Terror.
I don't know if I want to.
It just has one scene that's disturbing somewhere in it.
Yeah, I mean, there's one scene that's really pretty ridiculous to me. There's a scene where basically the whole thing is the planet like gives people's real fears like real substance, and then they die to them, right?
Okay.
So there's a woman who's afraid. I forget specifically what she's afraid of, but she's mostly afraid of like worms and stuff. So she basically what ends up happening is she sees a bunch of like maggots, and then her fears kick in, and one of the maggots grows to giant size and rapes her to death.
Ooh.
I don't need to see this movie anymore.
Yeah, it's a ridiculously weird goddamn scene. And it's one of those things I wish I could pluck out of my brain. Because I wish that wasn't in there sometimes because it is ridiculous.
I was going to ask you if it had anything to do with space vaginas, like you showed me on Shudder, but that was far. This description was far worse. By the way, you have a minute left now. Is there anything else we want to say about found footage?
Where could I go from space vaginas?
I know, space vaginas. Schofield, what was the name of that thing that we watched?
Blood Machines.
Blood Machines.
Oh, yeah.
That
one was crazy.
Experience. It's an experience. You just have to watch it. It's like maybe an hour long in total. It's 3 parts or 4 parts or something like that. Yeah, just
great
watch
music.
it.
Really,
yeah, great music. Kind of has a hard time sticking the landing, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
A lot of nudity.
A little bit.
Yes. We were watching our managers over the internet, like over the streaming service, and I was kind of sitting there going, I know this is off of work hours, but holy shit, this is getting a little bad.
Yeah. Thank goodness we have a chill workplace.
True.
Yes. No, thank God. All right, 10 seconds left. Anybody else want to say anything else?
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
All right, cool. All right, so I don't think I have to spin it, but whatever. All right, so I'm going to start my time with boom. Why does there have to be so much nudity in horror films?
Thank you. I was trying to get you to like do that when I said my line earlier. I was like, here's you can jump off of this.
Yeah.
Just jump off my maggot rape scene to nudity there, Jimmy. That's
Yes, but no, but honestly, like I get like if there's a shower scene, for instance, and one of the main characters is in there and they're getting attacked. Like the beginning of like Jack Frost. I know it's a comedy horror film, but still, at least that scene makes sense. But like if you've got somebody tied up, do they have to be naked? Do they have like there's and the amount of female nudity I think is absolutely ridiculous. Like I first of all, I think that if there's going to be that much female nudity, then just make that much male nudity. I don't like make it
quality.
Equal, first of all. Exactly. like make it equal. But the other thing is that like the amount of just nudity just to be able to say, hey, there's tits in this movie is absolutely ridiculous, especially when you go and look at the 80s and the 90s. Like there was just so much nudity. There was like you look back at this, you're kind of sitting there going, what made them think that this was a good idea? Like why does this woman have to be naked running through the forest as she's being stalked by Jason, for instance, or something? Like I've never really truly understood. Even I'm almost 36, I still look at these films and I'm still kind of like, why did there have to be that much nudity in these films? But like, and even if it's like for instance, like I know rape has come up like a million times during this. This is the rape episode, and I didn't mean it to be, but
don't give it that subtitle.
Episode 1 of the rape episode. That is terrible. Anyways, but no,
I'm unsubscribed from this podcast immediately.
You have to subscribe first. But no, even like during a rape scene, for instance, I don't know. It's just one of those things where, first of all, I feel as though rape scenes, like every once in a while, it's like we said earlier, it kind of almost serves a purpose to like the storyline. But like a lot of the times you're seeing these these scenes, and again, they're just unnecessary to me. So like, I don't know, like, what's you guys' thoughts on the amount of nudity you've seen in horror films?
I have thoughts.
Go for it.
There's a few different things. So like, in one way, if you think about what horror is, like it's like it gets the blood pumping. It's like seeing something taboo. It's shocking. And so in that way, like seeing nudity is in a similar vein. So like it kind of makes sense that they would also try to throw that in. I also secretly think that a lot of directors, if given complete freedom, like for some reason they just always want to have nudity in it. Like it's the fact that they can't do it in a lower rated movie. Like if they're able to, like they want to, like it's seen as art because they're not being restricted at all, even aside from horror stuff. But like you could also look at it from the perspective of like what scares people. So like being completely like nude is defenseless, like there's no protection at all. Something that's like getting thrown into a pit of needles would suck, if you were wearing clothes, but it would suck way more if you weren't wearing clothes, like stuff like that. But I think more realistically, especially when it's like much more heavily skewed towards like women nudity, it goes into a little bit of like a power fantasy and like voyeurism. So like in that way, it's like, which audience is this trying to excite? And if seeing a naked woman excites you, in addition to like seeing a little bit of violence, like there's that. And then also like in the case of like a rape fantasy, like that's also putting like a man in a position of power. So like even if you would never do that, like the point of horror is to kind of see stuff that's not real, to kind of deal with it in a safe way and still get some exciting out of it. Yeah. So like I feel like that's why this genre is an area where you see a lot more of that sort of thing, because it's just like that's the point of it, is to like get your blood pumping. That's why I don't think it's like making it quite equal wouldn't quite be the same unless you're targeting your movie towards women, which I don't think horror really is usually.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
That also goes to the whole concept of the male gaze as well, right? Like you're saying, like horror films are generally considered to be much more of a male-centric audience, right? And that's how like video games, we knew it was going to come up eventually. Video games were that way for a while as well, which is why like the new Mortal Kombat, and people were really angry about like some of the costume choices for the characters or the character designs, because they weren't nearly as overly sexual as they were in like Mortal Kombat, whatever.
Right.
Because they're realizing, hey, there's a lot more female gamers out there than there used to be.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not really overly happy with, Katana walking around with her breasts out the entire time. It just looks ridiculous.
Well, they also made the breast sizes smaller in this
much more realistic.
Last two,
which is good too.
The last two were ridiculous.
It was. But to your point, Finn, and kind of what you were saying, the shower scene, Jimmy, it also makes sense. Like Psycho, right?
Right.
When she gets killed in the shower, there's a reason why she's in the shower. And why that's scary is because she's at her most vulnerable state. She can't really see because she's behind the curtain and she's naked. There's nothing around to defend herself with, so she gets killed. That makes perfect sense. They didn't
also,
show
like everyone is like afraid of the shower curtain.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
oh yeah,
because you're most vulnerable. Like I'm in a slippery space. I can't see. Like how am I going to defend myself? Someone just comes at me. Like I'm totally defenseless.
Yeah, because
that makes perfect sense.
Shampoo in his eyes all the time.
All the time, right? you got to shampoo this somehow, right? So I totally get that. Like, as for the nudity itself, I think a lot of it in the 80s and 90s for me was kind of the hilarity on the whole morality tale, right? It's the virgin that lives. Sure. As soon as Billy and Judy go off to have sex and Judy's like, I'm going to go take a shower. And then Jason goes over and just kills her because they had sex. And now you can kill them because they're immoral teens, right? That was kind of the whole joke in the 80s. So that I get to some degree. But the nudity itself, I think, I'm with you, Fan. I think it's just there to like titillate us because it's the same sort of thing, right? But I'm more okay enjoying that than I was the torture, like we're talking about an earlier topic. Right. But it's just there to throw stuff in. But I don't think it adds much to it. What always gets me in movies, talking about nudity, and this kind of goes to your point too, Fen, sometimes it's not necessary to throw it in, and sometimes it is necessary and they don't throw it in, and that's what confuses me. Right, so you have these two people, and they have this like big sex scene. You don't really show any nudity in the sex scene, right? Because it's all like darkly lit and like kind of artistic. I'm like, that's fine. But then the next morning they wake up and they're all wearing underwear. And I'm like, you guys just had this like really long, like 45-minute, like 2-hour, whatever sex fest. But they're like, oh, that was good. Let me put my underwear back on. I'm gonna put my negligee back on. Then go to sleep. Like, no, you're just gonna go to sleep, right? Like, I don't understand that. So it's confusing to me, right? And that would actually show a bit more because they're both nude and they're talking with each other. It would show some comfort between the two of them, some intimacy. There's things that would actually add to it. They don't show it, which is confusing.
Yeah.
And then when there is no reason to show it, they do. Like the example I always use for people for needless nudity is Demolition Man.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
You ever seen Demolition Man?
Oh,
No.
a long time ago.
It's a really good movie. It's very smart, actually, too. A very well made film. It's no nudity, except one point a woman accidentally calls Sylvester Stallone on a video phone, and she's nude and goes, "Ooh," and then shuts off the phone.
Yeah.
There's no reason that the scene is in there. It's like 5 seconds long just to show this woman completely nude for no reason at all. It's just to throw in some nudity into the film, which I think goes to your point. Like sometimes they just like, it's R-rated. Let's throw some nudity in because it's fun.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, because you can. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you laughing at, Jimmy?
I know the scene. I'm thinking of the scene because now that I'm thinking about it, I haven't seen the movie in forever. So now I'm thinking about it. First of all, it does stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Right. But it's also funny because she's like, oh my God.
Dumbest movies. I would recommend you watch it, Ben. It's actually very smart.
Yeah.
It talks a lot about consumerism and like class stuff, and wrapped up in like an 80s, like, or I think in the 90s, but it has like a real 80s, like over the top action feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually quite smart, which I enjoy quite a bit.
It's always left the mystery though. How with the 3 shells?
Yeah. Just watch it, man. You'll
just never know.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, as for why in horror in general, I think it's kind of the same reason that people, possibly like I think it's primarily what you said, Finn, where people like we want to watch this taboo thing and exercise these demons. Like we all have violent impulses. We all want to like punch that guy who's walking too slow in front of us, right? When we're trying to get somewhere. We all see that
Like
attractive
dumb people on
person.
their phone.
Right, exactly. We always see that attractive person like giving us coffee or a waiter or something or a waitress, and we're like, ooh, I wonder what that person looks like naked, just because we're human beings, right? And that's kind of runs through your head. You don't act on it, you don't dwell on it because you're not a creep, but it runs through your head. You're like, or like son of a bitch, like, ooh, and then you just kind of move on. But horror,
sometimes
kind of deal with that, right?
Yeah, and sometimes in horror, like you're following it from the perspective of like a deranged person. So like in those cases, it makes sense where that stuff might come up more because you're like getting into the mind of this person. Like in like a lot of these cases that we've talked about, it all depends on like, did you actually think about why you're putting it in? If it was just for the sake of it, then it's probably going to feel clunky unless I'm watching something that's cheesy and like campy and made to be clunky. Or like, did you think of why you did this? Because like if the point is to have like some sort of revenge fantasy, like what that actually looks like is different depending on who you're like targeting or who the character is. Like, yeah, you have to just think about what makes sense for the story. Because like all of these things, like we like horror, we're not like prudes and we don't want to see any of this stuff ever. Like it makes sense in certain cases, but like if you try and shove it in, especially if it's like a really delicate topic, it can really take you out of it. You'll be like, whoa, why was that necessary? It wasn't just like a shocking, like, holy crap, that was like exciting. It was just like, wait, this isn't real anymore.
Yeah,
like,
why?
Yeah.
Well, I also wonder if it's less popular nowadays just because nudity is so easily accessible nowadays.
Oh, sure.
Less
In
taboo.
the 80s and 90s, if I wanted to see a naked woman, it was very difficult for me to do.
Yeah, right.
As like a teenager, right? Like I was like 15 in 97, right? So in 1997, I'm trying to find a nude picture of a girl. It's difficult to do because the internet is not really up and running to the same degree it is now. So I had to buy porn, but I can't buy porn because I'm 15.
Yeah.
But nowadays, a 15-year-old wants to find porn. There you go. You got it. Nudity.
And we don't use like movie theater and like that sort of stuff as much either, or like have renting movies. Like everything's online, which is also where all the naked people are. So like there's absolutely no disconnect.
Yeah. So like if I want to see tits and I'm a 15-year-old, then I'm just gonna go see tits. I don't need to go, ooh, let's go rent like Wild Things with Nev Campbell. Ooh, right? And, I don't know movie because like that was like the big deal. Because like it was like so much nudity in that film. But nowadays someone's just like, well, I have the internet, so why do I care about seeing this girl nude? Like who gives a crap? Like I want to watch a movie for the movies, not the TNA.
And I also think that nowadays people have realized that the amount of nudity isn't necessary. Like I was saying earlier, like I think they finally realized that, like, yeah, okay, so a nude scene nudity during a sex scene or a shower scene, that makes sense. But if you're again running around in the forest trying to, almost being killed by someone, 99% of the time it's not going to make any sense that you're naked, especially if you're like for instance, like I'll even give credit to Evil Dead, like the whole street rape scene, for instance. Like I don't remember there being any actual like super nudity during that scene, even though it's again super.
But does that scene really need to be in there?
No, even okay. Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, actually the actors that shot that scene have all come out and been like, that scene was unnecessary. Like
Evil Dead 2 does a better job with it because it just kills her.
Oh yeah, which makes sense.
It rips her clothes a little bit, but not really in like a sexual way. Just rips her clothes because her clothes would rip, and she gets dragged off. She gets killed. And you're like, fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Much better. I don't. The first one, I'm like, why do we need to see a tree branch going up this woman's vagina?
Exactly. Yeah. There's no reason.
I mean, like if it was targeted for women, that would be very scary.
Women are like, man, I'm glad I saw this film because this is like what we're gonna do when we get home now, honey.
Oh God.
I want to dress up like a tree. That's just weird. Oh God, Schofield. Why? Anyways,
This is your fault.
It's the rape episode, Jimmy. You already talked about it.
Yeah, oh God.
Wow, Jesus.
why did the first episode never get aired? Oh, I wonder.
Yeah, that's the thing. But like, it's not necessary to do that, right? Like, you need to really understand why you're doing it. I mean, I do think a lot of that stuff is very. I don't want to get into the whole politics of it, but like, you know, I'll go out and say like I'm as much of a feminist as I can be, being a guy, right? Mm-hmm. But there's just no point, and it really is disrespectful because you're using these women and this violence towards women in a way to titilize people and you know, like tantalize them and then throw the nudity in there for no reason. There are times where it's necessary. I think there's times where it adds to the story, but if you're not doing it for that reason, you shouldn't throw it in.
Exactly.
And my big thing is, I know, Jimmy, I've been talking about Cyberpunk because I just played Cyberpunk the other day, just finished it.
On
the
stage?
sex scenes, yes, yeah.
I knew we talk about video games.
Yeah. There's there's a lot of sex scenes in Cyberpunk that you have access to. They go on for a while, and they are from the first person, and they are pretty damn graphic. And I'm watching them, I'm like, why do we need to have this in here? Right. Like, I still think the best done sex scenes in video games that are still adult, right, are probably the first Mass Effect and the third Mass Effect. There is nudity in those, right? But it just shows the characters. They are nude, right? They are having sex, but it isn't this like drawn out, like pornographic sort of thing. It's just like, you know exactly what's happening. It's quick enough that you understand that this is like a sexual thing, and then you move on.
Right.
The second one goes a little overboard, and it's a little bit too graphic. Mm-hmm. But the first and the third do a good job, and they kind of show this is like a romantic sort of thing. Cyberpunk handled romances fairly well, the ones that I saw, but the sex scenes go on for a while to the point where I'm like, why am I doing like porn here in my video game? This is a little much.
It's also weird because it's like not necessarily what I would sign up for that. I feel like with like The Witcher going in, since it's made by the same people, we're totally switching gears to video games. You would go in with kind of that expectation of like you're gonna see some risque stuff. Cyberpunk, I know it's made by the same people, but like I haven't heard anyone talk about that sort of thing. And like there is a subclass, I don't want to say there's but like a class of people who are like excited for that sort of thing. Like they want the romance and they want it to be juicy. So like that would be a draw for them. But like I haven't heard anything like that. Maybe it's just been getting drowned out by all the other stuff that's in.
I love romance in video games. I love romance and most things. I think
well, though.
Adds a lot. Yeah, well done well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like I play a lot of D&D. I play a lot of video games and role playing stuff. I love romance and all that kind of stuff. I think it adds a lot. Because if I don't care about the characters, I don't care about the show or the movie or the game. And romance done well really makes you care about both those people in that relationship because you feel like you're kind of invested in what their love is or whatever. They do a fairly good job in Cyberpunk, but yeah, it isn't a game that I expected to have a massive romantic component to it, but there is some decent romance in it. Right. But yeah, it's a little over the top in Cyberpunk. We could have a whole conversation about video games and excess in video games in another episode. But
yeah, I mean, to bring it back to like the point with movies and stuff, like if that stuff is important for the character or for the story to move forward, like most of the time there's ways to handle it without like graphically showing it.
Sure.
But like it's been so overdone at this point. Like that's the only way to traumatize a woman. To like, it's just, even if you wrote a beautiful story and you included it, it's just like so overdone. Like, can't you get a little bit more creative and like think of a different way to traumatize her? Like, it's just boring at this point. And maybe that's
also agree that nudity was out as soon as they made Species.
was that the point?
That was it.
That's where the nudity jumped the shark.
Right. I mean, at least in Species, the nudity makes a ton of sense as to why it's in there, right? Plot wise, but there's like a decent amount in all the Species movies. But I'm just like, okay, but this is like ridiculous. But that's also like quintessential '90s like schlock, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. I mean, any other thoughts on the nudity? Because we only got 2.5 minutes left. I mean, I was about to say,
What's your topic?
Yeah, exactly.
You're all good. You talked enough about.
No, I think we've talked about nudity enough. I mean, I do have to ask: is it true that you can you can customize your penis in Cyberpunk?
Actually, that makes a little bit more sense now because I knew that was a big thing about Cyberpunk, and I was like, why would it matter? Like with Conan, you were constantly running around and seeing naked people, so it made sense that they had a schlong slider. But like for Cyberpunk, like didn't quite make sense unless it was like a cybernetic thing.
Because your genitalia will be involved in cutscenes.
Oh my god!
Weird.
All right. Yeah, I think that wraps up our conversation about horror movies. I'm sure we're gonna have like any good horror movie series. I'm sure that we're gonna have sequels to this episode where we're gonna discuss other topics within the horror films. So, yeah, thank you guys for coming on. I'm sure you guys will be on again. You know, whenever I come up with a good topic for you guys to talk about again.
Sure.
Yeah, anytime.
All right, cool. All right, and thank you all for watching, listening. Subscribe, ding the bell, or whatever the fuck people say. Oh, actually, I do have to point out, Bekah, it does say shit on your pillow, right?
Oh, you've noticed that little Easter egg.
Yes.
This is my bag that says full of shit. Shout out to my best friend Yessie who gave that to me.
I enjoyed that.
That's awesome. All right, cool. All right, see you guys later. All right, bye.
Bye.